read an excerpt from Conan the Barbarian, the original Marvel Years, Volume 9. This was my first time ever reading anything about Conan the Barbarian, so it was my first introduction to his character. I thought he was a very interesting guy. He felt like your classic comic book hero. He's big, he's strong, he doesn't actually have any powers, which I thought was interesting. I always think it's interesting when comic characters don't have powers. But he's a very charismatic, interesting guy. This story is called City of Light, and it opens with him traversing through the desert. And his horse dies. He's on death's door. He's malnourished, dehydrated. He's probably going to die. Like, he's seeing mirages in the desert. It's not looking good for him. Something that I noticed immediately is that it's very narration heavy, as in, like, the narration is almost speaking for him. It can take up the place of, like, thought bubbles or even just visual representations through, like, the drawings. So it's like the horse dies at the beginning, and the horse collapses, he's touching the horse, and then the narration just says, dead. Conan will have to walk. As it rises high in the desert sky, the sun melts away Conan's strength. So the narration, it is very, like, in-depth. I would say it's relying more on the writing than it is on the drawing, which I feel like isn't something that I usually see, especially in action comics. The focus is, I find, usually on, like, what is visually happening, like, physically with characters in space in relation to each other. So it's definitely a different narrative style, but I think it works with Conan because I definitely wasn't given the impression that he had a particularly complex internal monologue, which is not to say I'm calling him stupid, but he just didn't. It was more the emphasis I felt on, like, where he was and what he was doing rather than what he was thinking or perceiving about his surroundings. So I just noticed that was a very, like, specific stylistic choice. So he faints in the middle of the desert. He's probably going to die. And then he's approached by this mysterious woman who, like, pours water into his mouth and revives him. And upon waking up, she's gone, but this magical city has appeared out of literally nowhere. So you can see in the bottom there, the appearance of that city. And what I thought was very interesting about the city is that visually, it looks like a maze. It really does. It's surrounded by these walls, and it's very geometric. You know, everything is angular, 90-degree corners everywhere, and it really just, to me, this looks like a labyrinth. It kind of reminded me of, like, Odysseus and the Minotaur, like that kind of vibes. So he enters the city, he walks in, and immediately something is very, very off. And this is where I think the narration-heavy aspect of the writing does help, because when he enters, it says, broad palms should line the avenues of an oasis city. Here there are none. The townsfolk wander aimlessly about, smiling and happy, yet no camels, no trade. And you immediately do notice that something is a little bit off. These people, like, they don't seem real, they seem a little fake, and they're all blonde, which I thought was a very interesting choice. Like, you can definitely tell that this is, like, a very strange city. There's one bald character, and the rest of them are blonde. And I didn't notice that until the end. I was like, huh, that is, like, uncanny and odd. So he approaches someone, he's like, what city is this? Like, who rules here? And the guy is very unhelpful and just kind of, like, a little dazed and, like, sort of, like, glazy. He finds a tavern in the middle of the square where the townspeople are, like, inexplicably dancing in some strange ritual, though nothing really seems to be happening. So he sits down, he regains his strength, he's at the bar, and a very funny moment is he yells at the barkeep. He says, barkeep, I need a horse, provisions, and maps if you got them. I'm leaving now. Don't stand there gawking, I said now. He's a very abrasive character. Like, he goes in kind of all guns blazing, which I don't think is maybe the best strategy when you pull up to a random city and everything's kind of weird and you're just going to yell at people. So this is what I mean. I don't think he's very intelligent. He doesn't really make strategical decisions. He's more of a fighting guy. Fair enough, that's his style. Fascinatingly, the barkeep's answer to this demand is, what's a horse? And he's being genuine. He's not being facetious. Like, you really believe this guy does not know what a horse is. So at this point, okay, something is very strange in this town. Conan becomes enraged at this nonsense. And then, for the first time, the lady from the desert reappears. and we see her. And she definitely is fulfilling a bit of this, like, temptress archetype. You can see as she's, like, approaching him here, she's flirting with him and getting him to stay and being like, oh, like, isn't it great here? And also, interestingly enough, she knows his name. Like, of course I'm real Conan. Like, stay, Conan. He's, of course, never told her his name. They haven't actually had a proper conversation before. So it really does add to this uncanny, almost uncomfortable feeling. He's like, no, I need to get out. I need to leave. And then as he's trying to escape the city, the walls inexplicably change. You know, turns are created, the walls go up. Like, the city is warping to keep him inside. This definitely does fall in line with, I feel like, a very common theme of labyrinths. Think like Percy Jackson in the casino that won't let them get out, or like I said, Theseus and the Minotaur for something a little more classical. It's a very old trope, and I think it really works. It's literally trying to keep him here, trying to, like, curb almost his desire for freedom. So he ultimately fails to escape. The city is just so good at keeping him in track. But because of his insistence on leaving, he angers these, like, gargoyles in the city, these, like, stone creatures that come to life and try to kill him and attack him. They seem to be the protectors of this place, though they feel a bit more like the jailers. There's a difference, I think, between protecting people and also keeping them trapped and convincing them that they want to be somewhere. So I thought that was an interesting take, because all the people inside the city are very happy. Like, oh, this is a place of pleasure, of happiness, but also of no freedom. They don't really do anything all day. Conan actually manages to defeat these great hulking beasts, and I feel like this is when it is a most traditional comic, because, you know, it's a fight scene. He's fighting people. He's stabbing people with his swords. It feels like what I might expect from a character named Conan the Barbarian. Ultimately, he is successful in defeating the monsters, and he's able to escape because one of the monsters, like, crashes through a wall in the city, and he can walk out. And then he meets the woman again, and I thought that their exchange was especially interesting. She says, I thought surely you would die. You are indeed a mighty warrior, but it was also unnecessary. Is your freedom really more precious than pleasure without end? I think that that is the, like, summarizing question of this comic. That's the question. Pleasure or freedom? Conan doesn't have much to offer by way of answer. He does say, a man needs more than pleasure, which, what is this game you play? So he does have a very strong set of values. He has a strong understanding of what he wants and what he believes in, but he doesn't necessarily articulate that. It might be interesting if he did offer his side, but I just don't think that's within his character. I don't think that's what this story is supposed to be. But I did really enjoy how well he knew himself, even if it wasn't a particularly complex story, or even if he isn't a particularly complex character. I didn't feel like that was the point, and honestly, I was very satisfied with what I got. And the lady at the end disapparates, she disappears. He's like, oh, was it all a mirage? But, like, no, like, I know it was real. And he walks off into the desert. It's night now, and he has survived this ordeal. This was a very entertaining introduction to Conan the Barbarian as a character. I enjoyed it. I really had no idea what to expect going into it. I appreciated the simplicity of the story, because while it was simple, I thought it was very clear in what it was trying to do, what it was trying to communicate, and I appreciate that kind of directness in a story, and I think it accomplishes that really well, and it was certainly an entertaining read.